Welcome to another episode of Exploring the Vintage NFT Space podcast with Zero G. I'm very excited to have Seb, the creator of CryptoArte and several other projects with me today. Thanks for joining me today, Seb.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, really excited to talk to you. I mean, there's so much going on that you've worked on, and I know you've got a lot of current projects too. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure. Likewise. It's yeah, let's get to it.
Okay, yeah. Well, first off, I mean, you obviously have a lot of skills and talents in the area, but first let's talk about how you found out and got interested in crypto and what actually got you to like pull the trigger to actually acquire some the first time.
Yeah, for sure. So I got interested at first mostly from the tech side of things, so specifically on Ethereum, right? So I run a software development shop, and we work mostly with entrepreneurs and early stage companies. And some founders in the area were asking me about, they had some ideas on blockchain and Ethereum back in like 2017-ish. And they just kept asking me about it. And I'm like, hey, I know my basics about blockchain, but I don't really know much about the tech stack or how it works. And that happened a few times. And then eventually I'm like, hey, I gotta look into this because there's definitely something going on. And at the time there was a little bit of the crazy of the ICOs, and I didn't touch any of that, but like I think that has spurred a lot of interest in other entrepreneurs and other areas as well. And so yeah, just started looking at the tech stack really like from a technology perspective, and kind of fell in love with Ethereum and smart contracts, and the whole idea of being able to kind of build your immutable API and kind of programmable money and smart contracts in general. Kind of the ideas of decentralization and disintermediation and kind of immutability, all of those really kind of piqued my interest, right? And when combined with kind of the programmable money aspects, that's what really got me into it at first. And then as I got into it, I realized that the kind of documentation and kind of the tools that were available for developers were still like it was still early, right? Even though Ethereum had been around for a little while, the tech side was still pretty early. SDKs, Web3.js, things like that weren't as polished, and they still aren't, to be honest as well. But like, so I started putting out a lot of tutorials, guides, and some open source projects that I did to try and help other developers get into it as well, and that ultimately led to the first project.
Oh, that's cool. So, I mean, so you were really attracted initially by what you could do with the tech, because from demand from what you're getting. What was your like? Did you have any thoughts about the hard money aspects or the economics of it when you started reading about it? What was your thought there?
Yeah, obviously, like, yeah, I thought the cryptocurrencies themselves back then, I wasn't that much into them. But I thought it was interesting, obviously, for many different reasons. But I was really more into the tech and the programmable aspects of Ethereum. And then when that finally clicked, then it made a lot of sense to actually pay attention to Ethereum as a cryptocurrency as well, right? But it went in that order. It went into like, kind of entrepreneurship, tech, innovation, and then like, hey, on top of that, you actually have cryptocurrencies, so payments and things like that are kind of built into it. So it's kind of that combination that ultimately made me like fall in love with the tech.
I agree about the tech with Ethereum. It took me a long time to really like get it, but once I got it, like you said, being able to publish an application immutably, decentralized, like you can't take it down, right? It's right. such a I mean, coming from a tech background too, it's such a really refreshing like development in the IT space, so I think it's really exciting too. So it's cool to see what you guys have done. So before we go further, so obviously you were enticed by the tech angle. When did you start really get involved in like software development, and what was your background there?
Yeah. So as a kid, I got started developing very early on.
Mhm.
Um, so I have a very kind of mixed and diverse background, but I studied, I graduated from computer engineering, so I went to engineering school. I'm originally from Argentina. Went to school that it's kind of a very engineering only school. So we had all the different disciplines. Mine was a mix of computer science and electronic engineering. And yeah, so that's kind of my education or formal background. But I started programming when I was a kid. I had a Commodore 128, which was a luxury at the time. I was lucky that my dad was able to bring back home one of those from one of his trips. And yeah, I kind of fell in love with like it had like basic programming built into it, and so you could just kind of grab the manual, the operating manual of the Commodore, and they had programs and examples there. So as a kid, I would play with that mostly around music. You could program music. I think it was like a 8-bit processor, and you could program it to play, and it had like a little bit of polyphony, different tunes, different tones that you could do. And yeah, that's kind of how I got started developing as a kid, really. And I also studied 5 years classical music, like piano. And so that's kind of my more of my artistic background. But as a kid, I was already kind of mixing both the development and arts already.
Yeah, interesting. I was going to ask you about that next. Is where your artistic influence came from?
Yeah, for sure. So that played the organ when I was a kid, right? And I would just sit down and watch him play, all the bossa nova tunes, or all some tango, or some some jazz standards, and that was kind of how I got started. And then I can play at home a little bit, and eventually he's like, "Hey, do you really want to learn? We'll send you to conservatory so that I'll learn like proper piano technique and classical music." Yeah, for quite a while, and that was kind of my only really formal artistic education. I don't actually have like a background in visual arts, like from a formal perspective, but I was always kind of also teased about that. So my mom was in computer science and into like interior design and kind of geometry and kind of all this mix of design and yeah, geometry and perspective and things like that, right? Like, because she has also a mathematical background. So I think all this was kind of like my early influences as a kid. I would have like design books at home and different abstract art forms and things like that, right? And a little bit of that computer science, a little bit of the music, and so that somehow got all of it going.
No, interesting. Yeah, that's quite the mix. Um, so after you, so you what did you go to school for like development or like computer science?
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
computer engineering. Yeah,
Mhm.
went 5 years there back home, and yeah, and then had a career that was mostly all in entrepreneurship and innovation. I worked for many different startups, and I founded about 7 different companies myself,
Mhm.
except for a very large multinational corporation part of my career, where you kind of learn the ropes of like big corp. Um, that was great as well. But most of my life, I've been around entrepreneurship, innovation, startups, early stage, type companies.
Oh, interesting. That's cool. Um, yeah, so after so you got introduced to crypto through your development company. So how long did it take you to really like once you were introduced to that to like what was your first project and what like how long did it take you to actually get comfortable developing there?
Yeah. So, I would do it as as kind of as a side thing that I was kind of getting into, right? So maybe a couple hours a day. It
Yeah.
probably took me 2 to 3 months to really get, kind of a full picture. I really understood how everything worked. Uh, Not necessarily, the whole network, but like all of the major pieces, and especially all of kind of the developer, facing pieces, right? Like, all the way from like what you can do with the VM and the smart contract to understanding a little bit more of the internals of the network and all the way to like, Web3 and UX and kind of getting the whole picture. Yeah, it took a couple months. My first my first application was very simple, and I think it's open source. It's out there. I have some posts on Medium. They're probably a little outdated there, but they're still there. It was basically a profile application where you could, basically create a user and have it linked to your wallet and have like a username and maybe some other information linked to it. So I was thinking of maybe using that as a precursor to build like a very minimalistic, social media type application on Web3, right? On a smart contract. Then quickly realized that it was a little too expensive gas wise to solve like that. So I kind of ended up
Oh
not,
yeah.
not building the whole thing. But yeah, that was kind of the very first kind of app that said like, hey, can I build like a simple profile application where you can identify users and then you can build things on top.
Yeah, it's interesting that just now we're starting to get some of these scaling solutions to where stuff like that might actually be feasible again, with the optimism and all these roll-ups and stuff that are coming out. So, but definitely a cool idea. I definitely see see where you're going there.
Yeah, for sure.
I know what you were saying too, in terms of the documentation stuff being pretty poor. I didn't try and do any development on the Ethereum side, but remember, I think it was in either 2018 or early 2019, I was trying to read about the move to POS too. And it was just, I went to all these websites and it was just such a Byzantine mess trying to figure out, like, if you're not already like deep in Ethereum, I couldn't figure out like what they're like, the timeline, the plan. I mean, everything was just it was so hard to follow and mystifying. I never really got a good answer then soon back then, and here we are in
Yeah,
2022. And
yeah,
it
like
looks like we're finally going to get it. So
yeah, for these two. Yeah. I remember one of my early tutorials, and again, I think they're all there on Medium still. It had like 10 different tips of like, hey, don't try this. This is how it's supposed to work, but doesn't work. Do this, do this instead. This works, right? And there was like 8 or 9 tips like that, right?
yeah.
Just like trial and error, because obviously documentation, the thing is not working. This is not how, this is theoretically how it's supposed to be, but it doesn't work. But start debugging and kind of trial and error to figure out like, okay, this is one way that it works. Go do it like this, right?
That kind of forces you to pay attention to the new features and development on Ethereum too, essentially.
Yeah, for sure. And over time, I had to update the CryptoArte website quite a few times because of breaking changes on like Web3 or on MetaMask and things like that as well. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, I guess let's talk about CryptoArte. So where'd you get the idea? Like, what was the inspiration for that?
Yeah. So I had done previously always like generative art. And I think the reason I like it is in general, computer graphics and visualization and geometry and descriptive geometry and then perspective and all of those things and rendering and all of those things are different areas where I always had interest. Sometimes kind of closer to like physics and mathematics. Like I did early things with like chaos theory and the Bender bouncer, which is like kind of very simple classical physics problem that can get folks introduced into chaos theory, right? So like I'll do visualizations of things like that for fun, right? I know it sounds super geeky, but like I just do them for fun and to kind of understand and like as a kid I built like a charting library where you would chart a mathematical function just to understand how you build that. So I had a lot of like early kind of work that I had done just kind of for myself that was either visualization data or excuse me, like visualizing data or kind of simple early generative art, right? But I had never tried to commercialize it or anything like that. I was just doing it for fun. And there was not really like a marketplace or anywhere where you could really sell that anyway. And sometimes, mix it with some music that I would compose or things like that. And then after kind of having like a first initial, like a few tutorials, a first initial projects, eventually I figured out like, hey, I really want to build like an actual project, deploy it to mainnet, and have a decentralized app, do something with it, right? So to show the real power of Ethereum. And at the time, the NFT standard had just been published, basically, maybe like a month or two. And I had been paying attention to that. I really wanted to kind of explore with that. I remember looking into CryptoKitties and CryptoPunks, and those were kind of early inspirations, the two projects at the time that were kind of inspirations. And when an NFT standard came out, it's like, hey, I want to do something with this. But, I had limited time, so it couldn't be anything like super crazy. And I wanted it to be fun. And that's where I decided like, hey, I want to mix my generative art with NFTs. I thought it was like a perfect match. And then kind of a continuation of what I had already been doing of like, hey, this articles, these tutorials, these posts that I would do and the open source that I would release, the whole idea was to try and help our developers to get into the space and kind of lower the barriers to entry, really, because the more developers you get into the ecosystem, the more the network effect you can really build, and then that helps everyone, right? So I just kind of wanted to foster awareness of the technology and the capabilities and what you could do with it. And so that's how the whole idea came together. It's like, hey, I want to do generative art because that's something that's fun for me and passionate about, and like I hadn't really published much about it. And I want to mix it with the NFT standard I was interested in. And then those two together, then I figured out like, okay, how do I make it so that this project is also a project that helps foster awareness of the technology and kind of talks about blockchain itself. So it's a little bit meta. That's when I finally got the idea. It's like, hey, I can use the publicly available Ethereum data and kind of visualize that in an artistic representation. And that's kind of, it all kind of came together that way.
Oh, it's interesting. One thing I always remarked at was, the way you ended up doing the visualization is really striking and unique. So that's one thing I think is really going to stand out long term for CryptoArte, is that like whenever you see a CryptoArte piece, you know exactly what it is. It's so unique across anything else I've seen in the early space. And it's also, I don't know if we would consider it the very first, but at least one of the very first generative art projects as well, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, it's that's a hot topic. Yeah, but it's arguably the first NFT, generative art NFT collection on Ethereum. There's Mooncats. I consider them more like collectibles. There's other art collections as well on blockchain in general. On Ethereum, I think it might be the first one. It depends so much on your definition of first.
Yeah, exactly.
First,
People really get mired into the mud on that. But in terms of, I'd probably lean towards saying crypto. From my understanding, is that CryptoArte would be like the first generative art. I mean, they have the generative aspect in Mooncast, like you said, for the selection. But I don't know. I don't really get that worried about it either way. But I think it's definitely really amazing. And like I said, also it's just such a striking piece. The other thing I think is really interesting too is using using the blockchain itself as the source of the data for the visualization is really clever as well. I also wouldn't have thought of like you're using all of these different statistics and data points to drive the art as well, like the miners and the miner rarity. And I don't know, it's a really fascinating project. But you launched during the crypto winter. So I know that you didn't sell through initially. What was it like launching during the bear there?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so when I launched it, it was really like the purpose was really that to like have fun, have a project out there, show that we can like that we have mastered the technology and the tech stack, so we can do work for clients as well, but also like have fun from an artistic perspective and like kind of convey that mission, right, of fostering awareness of the technology of Ethereum, of NFTs, and what you can do with it, how it combines with art. So that was always intention, right? So it wasn't,
Yeah.
I wasn't looking for a home run or to make it, XYZ amount of dollars or anything like that. It was like really like mission driven. So I was happy with it, and I thought that, hey, this has the potential to become something big one day, but who knows? If it doesn't, it's fine, right? Because I had my fun, I made my statement, and like hopefully, people will pick it up. But I wasn't how to say annoyed by it, or by any means. On the opposite, I would get excited, like it used to be like, on a random week, somebody would like buy one or ask me or mint one for them. And I was like so happy. And it was such an excitement, because not for the money, because it was like, $10 at the time or whatever. Right. So it wasn't like really so much like the income itself, because, at the time it was like a losing proposition, like the amount of energy and effort that I invested. It's like, the return would be like terrible compared to my opportunity cost of working on anything else. So it wasn't a monetary motivation, but it was like so much happiness from like more of like my artistic perspective. Like, hey, somebody actually liked it, and like they're either asking me to mint one for them, or they're getting one that I already minted. And it was so much joy, even if it was like maybe one a week. Sometimes it would go on for like a couple of weeks, and nobody would come out and like say anything, and then all of a sudden I may get like someone that, hey, I want this 5 or 6 months, and that was a lot of joy for sure.
That's cool. One thing I thought was really striking and almost to me almost shocking when I came across your the CryptoArte website. I minted a few off the website, or collected them that you had minted, off the website. And one thing that blew me away is the sophistication of your website for as old as it is, with the all the different features. I had never seen anything like that in the early crypto space. So for our listeners, you have, if you go to CryptoArte, you would be able to select a painting, and then you could purchase it directly through the website for a nominal amount of F. And then once you had that, it would use MetaMask, and it could validate that you actually own a painting. And once it validates that, you can download the 8K image of your painting in high res. And you also had the bones there for the intention there to allow you to print. And now you have that up and working to where you can order a print of your CryptoArte painting too.
Yeah, that's right. So I remember talking to the folks at Known Origin and OpenSea at the time, right? Because they're like,
Mhm.
top tier teams, and they have great devs, and they were, them. And I think I also spoke with John at Super Rare, I think once or twice. That was pretty much all the folks that were around, right? Like there was not much else, right? Like, and remember chatting with them and asking them like, hey, how would you go about securing, the 8K images if I didn't want to make those public, right? Because back then it was still not that clear if folks would, really start caring more about the digitals and the NFTs and the physicals, or if they would be like some sort of more of an intermediate, right? And I don't think it's still clear, right? Like, but what's clear now is that folks do value a lot those NFTs, right? But for CryptoArte, I kind of wanted to explore also, what are the rights of ownership, not just provenance and immutability and authenticity, which I also did, right? All of those, but wanted to explore also, what are the rights of ownership from that digital token, right? And so I came up with this idea, and I asked them like, hey, have you guys seen any of this? And they're like, no, but you can validate, ownership of the wallet by doing a signature request, which I knew. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I was planning to use. So I figured out all the the interfaces on Web3 that you need to call to do that private key calculation, which is basically what you have if you have your seed phrase, right? From your seed phrase, you can derive your private key. You can use the private key to sign, and then the backend can use your public key, which is your address, right? to verify that that signature is correct, right? So I got all that mechanism implemented and working. And then the next thing was to kind of stream back to the client the 8K full resolution image, right? So yeah, I got it working. It was pretty cool. It wasn't I don't think existing anywhere else, but I got it working. That was really, really cool. And that was part of the mission. It's like, hey, I want to show that you can build functionality on top, right? And it doesn't need to necessarily be a transaction, right? So back in my career, I had done some work on cryptography before, so that helped, of course. I did a lot of work with smart cards and secure personalization of things like work on projects like the electronic passports and things like that, and SIM cards and banking cards, and so I did a lot of cryptography earlier in my career, and that helped a lot. Yeah, it was exciting to get that. I wanted to explore that idea of like, if you have the ownership of this digital token, can that give you some extra thing, which now we call utility, we call unlockable content, or whatever that is, that depending on how you put it.
Yeah, the whole angle with ownership is really interesting, with NFT space, because now, with these digital assets, it's, there's the joke about being able to right click save, but really the provenance and the chain of ownership is one of the most important things, and one of the most important innovations that NFTs brought. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting aspect to it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you couple that together with the ability to validate authenticity without any intermediate party, right? So with CryptoArte, you can basically, once you download that 8K image, you can calculate the SHA-256 hash of it, right? It just requires having a command line tool or like a simple application, right? The algorithm is public, so you can calculate the hash, and then that same hash is stored on the blockchain. So you can actually,
that's how you guys did it. You stored the hash of the full file.
Yeah, exactly. And it's inspired by the mechanism from CryptoPunks. The only difference is CryptoPunks had like a huge image with all the punks, and they calculated the hash and they put that on chain. For CryptoArte, that would be like too much of like, because each image is huge, right? So, but the idea, it was inspired by them. Like the idea is very similar. So each token has its own hash, right? And that hash matches the hash that you can calculate from the digital image. So if somebody gave you that digital image, you can validate that that's authentic without any third parties, right? Like on your own against the blockchain, right? You can see that that token has never changed the hash, right? So you can validate basically authenticity of that digital image as well, right?
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I knew CryptoPunks did it with that huge like image of all of the punks. But yeah, that, like you said, that would have been, well, plus you were manually generating these too at the time. It's not like you had a master one done, and so you were going manually minting these in batches, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, the generation of all the images. So each painting has the full resolution 8K image, and it also has a bunch of like low resolution, so they're really small and fast and nimble, and then mid resolution images, and then also a sample of a kind of a higher resolution of like a sample of the painting, right? So the generation of all that was scripted and basically took about 3 days to run because there's so much data and so much to generate, right? So it's computation and also rendering and storage, and it just takes a long time. So it took me about 3 days to generate for the whole collection. But then the minting itself is interesting, yeah, because the contract is a little bit older, right, than many of the other collections. And so at the time, I wasn't really clear of what the pattern was going to be, because the NFT standard, very cleverly by design, intentionally doesn't describe how would you typically buy one of these assets, right? It just describes interoperability so that then other marketplaces can access to solve that other problem, right? Do you do an auction, or do you sell it for like a fixed price, or is it free to mint, or what is it, right? And so when I got started, basically, I just kind of wanted to get the NFTs part going and get that standard going. And so the way I deployed the contract, I was the only one that could mint the paintings. And so, excuse me, even though at the beginning of the project, I generated all of the art, published it on the site, published all of the hashes for all of the site, and deployed the contract to mainnet, there were no mints, right? And so over time, I would start minting them. And then at first, I would just mint a very small inventory and put it up on OpenSea as a way to sell the work, right? And then eventually I built my own sales contract that essentially works as a very small marketplace so that you could buy directly from the site.
Okay.
But I was still the only one that was able to mint technically the paintings because I had the administrative access to that original contract.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, interesting. So, so you launched that so long ago and that really took off again last year. I'm sure that was a pretty wild experience to see one of your old projects get so much attention.
Yeah, for sure. It was pretty wild. The first big wave was in March, and we were not ready for that because I had never, at the time, the projects that were starting to launch were starting to kind of come up with what nowadays almost feels like an old playbook, but that kind of typical playbook. You have Discord, you have that, when is it gonna mint, what is the supply, what is the floor, and like have some support and have some moderation and like all this stuff, right? I didn't have any of that because it wasn't never intended to be like, hey, that type initiative, like that didn't even exist when I built it, right? So we were a little bit unready for the first wave around March. And then we learned a lot from that. And then, kind of built up a little bit more the tech, improved the website, made it a little bit smoother, made more mints available, and then had it ready so that I could mint a little more. The fact that I was the only one minting was a little bit of a chicken and egg problem because minting was expensive, right? So I couldn't just go and mint the whole collection, right? Because it would, cost me like, $250,000 or something like that, right?
Especially last year, gas was insane.
Yeah.
Most of the year after like you said, at March onward, gas was crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, like the tech had changed as well. So I had to adapt and like, fix and breaking changes from different libraries and whatnot. But anyway, at the end of the day, when the next wave came back, we were a lot more ready in terms of like, having the Discord well set up, having some admin help, having they're volunteers, but like we have mods that are volunteer on our Discord, and having the website a lot more ready and having things a lot more streamlined in terms of how it made like a lot more automated pieces. Even if it was still me having to mint, I was able to. I just had it a lot more automated, so the whole thing worked a lot more smoothly. Even though it was still a challenge, right? Because there was still that challenge of like, hey. Maybe I sell X and then that enables me to go mint Y, right? So it was still challenging because of all the kind of legacy, so to speak, right? And all the disparity of different tools and versions and whatnot. But we made it work. We were very much more ready for the second wave. And that was really, really exciting for sure.
I was part of that March wave, that initial one. So I was able to grab a couple of the paintings in the 300s, that were still left because all the everything before that had already been gobbled up. So I don't know. One thing I really appreciate about the collection too, that is the wide variety, because you're using the way you did the generative process for this, as Ethereum as the data. You have such a wide variety of composition in terms of colors and looks for the CryptoArte. So it makes it a really fun collection from that angle too. Different people are attracted to different like things to collect. Like there's no, it's kind of like a choose your own adventure in terms of what you value or what you are really want to collect in CryptoArte. For the, some people choose age, and like some people go after like minor rarities or colors. I mean, it's kind of a fascinating project for that perspective too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it has multiple dimensions and layers to it. From that, there's the kind of, I kind of started mostly from the artistic perspective, right on into what were the most important parts that I wanted to convey, right? So my idea was always like, hey, if I go to somebody's house or they come to my place and I have a CryptoArte painting and talking to someone that has no clue what blockchain is, right? Can I grab that painting and explain kind of visually in a fun way, here's how Ethereum works, right? And that's kind of the premise that said everything else, right? Like my process of picking up which signals, which data is important to have, right? So miners is very, very important in terms of like telling the history of Ethereum, in terms of explaining centralization versus decentralization, right? Like for instance, when you see a painting that has a lot of the same miner, right? The technology may be there for it to be decentralized, but it's always the same miner. Well, there's not that much decentralization, right? Well, there's sideways of like mining pools and stuff, but that's kind of like the idea, right? Like, hey, I want to do miners, and then what are the other signals that I really care about to tell that history of Ethereum as well. And the first thing that I figured out was like there were no transactions for a very long time. So I wanted to show that. I wanted to show that signal of the number of transactions, right, in a given block. And that's kind of how the whole artistic concept came together. It's like picking up what are important signals that I want to show so that I can tell someone how blockchain works by looking at a painting, and also having enough variety, obviously, and rarity and things like that, and like making it visually, aesthetically interesting, right? So it was kind of that solving for all that, right? Like, so I got down to like, hey, I want obviously the blocks numbers, how many blocks per painting came from like the decision of going with the 16:9 ratio and being on 8K to be prepared on screens, because I figured NFTs are probably going to be things that folks will want to look at in modern screens. And then kind of from there comes everything else, the number of transactions, the volume of ETH transacted in a block, the amount of gas paid in a block, and try and show congestion and things like that. And then also the difficulty, right? Because that's related to mining as well, and how all of that kind of evolved over time. And then after I had that, I added the hash as well of each blocks of the blocks to add a little bit more of uniqueness, right? Because each of the hashes are unique by themselves, right? So that adds a little bit more of coloring and more decoration with that, and also adds that other idea of like almost like a security mark to it as well.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because the hash really is is really what does set the security on a block. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of concepts that like, the miners, I was kind of thinking of, the immutability, right? Like once that block has been confirmed, it's been mined, it's there, right? And that forms the blockchain over time. And how, they couple to the previous hash and things like that, right? So that's, kind of that idea of immutability is kind of almost like a hieroglyphic of sorts, right? Like almost like caveman painting, right, over time, right? And it's like the same character appears. Okay, it's the same miner again, but I had to come up with a representation for miners that would be visually different enough so that you could identify different miners, but also varied enough so that I had enough representation for all the miners that I had to represent, right? So that was one of the core parts that took me probably the longest to come up with a representation that was aesthetically pleasing, but also had enough variety to be able to represent the different type miners. Yet it still made it possible for, us humans to say, oh, these are the same miner, right?
One thing that's funny is, the community is also taken to naming miners, the golden blocks. And I actually had the opportunity to name one. I named one of them Spicy Taco.
Nice. I like it. I have to look it
Yeah.
up. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
there's a spreadsheet there somewhere out there
Mhm.
in one of our channels, and yeah, the community is pretty passionate about naming them. Yeah, I
Yeah, it's
love that.
definitely, it's fun to see what the community comes up with. So I think that's really fun, that people are so passionate about it. Um, it gives people a way to interact and have their own mark on it too, in their own way.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I didn't grasp at all when I was building the project from the get-go, but then I ended up enjoying. One of the things I enjoy the most is actually that direct interaction between the audience or the collector and the creator, right? Which is another one of the magic things about Web3 is like creators can now basically just be in touch directly with their own audience and collector base, right? And that's amazing, right? That's so
Yeah.
inspiring as a creator. I love that.
Yeah, disintermediating any galleries or any other middleman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool to be able to directly interact with the artist as a collector too. That's something you'd never be able to do before.
Right. Yeah, of course. Unless you're like in an inner circle, right? And there's still a great space for galleries and like all of the traditional art institutions, right? I just think like, their roles or the way to operate will eventually start changing, right? But yeah, kind of reducing a lot of those barriers and, in the traditional art space, it's a lot harder, right? Unless you're like a well-known collector, or you're wealthy and like, it's very hard to get in front of some of the artists, so for sure.
Yeah, the traditional art world has really struggled, and they failed a few times with trying to incorporate or adapt to the NFT/digital space. I know the first last year they had the first auction of CryptoPunks. I can't remember whether it was Christie's or Sotheby's, but the way they did it was super disrespectful to the collection. It was a real slap in the face to not just CryptoPunks, but NFT collectors in general. So, there's definitely room for improvement there. I know they're slowly starting to get with it, but, it's interesting.
Yeah,
So
they'll adapt or die.
yeah, oh, totally. I mean, the other thing that is kind of shocking too is for people who are in our space, I mean, there's the prestige of selling at a famous auction house, but then when you realize the buyer and seller fees versus what these decentralized marketplaces charge, it's really shocking. And the amount of KYC and everything that they put the buyers and sellers through, it also diminishes your available pool of people that are willing to go through with it. So that's another reason why we saw what I thought were some disappointing sales results last year, was due to that. So
Yeah, likely. Yeah, no, I think they're doing a great job at adapting, but yeah, it will take time, right? Two very different worlds, right?
Mhm.
And I definitely want to make my my own contributions to it as well. But yeah, it's gonna take a little while.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think they'll adapt, or if they won't, someone else will kind of step into that space that will provide I guess, a more, I don't know, more authentic or a different experience for the IRL auction type thing. So it'll happen.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you wanted to talk about with CryptoArte? You've got a lot of other stuff we should talk about too. Is there anything else you wanted to throw out there or talk about?
No, I think we covered quite a bit of it, and we can interject some CryptoArte related comments later as well.
Sure. Yeah, I just didn't want to use all of our time for that.
Yeah.
Like you said, your profession was in development, and so one thing I learned is you still have your own development company. You want to talk about some of the projects that you've well, even before we do that, you set up you set up your other platform, Studio Uno or Uno, which created. I took advantage of that and minted a couple objects, which some of it is really extraordinary. I really love this this generative piece that I created. It almost looks like a supernova or something. I don't know. It's cool. You want to talk about that project for a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So Studio, kind of like how CryptoArte kind of came out of evolution of other work I was doing. Studio, came out of really the evolution of CryptoArte, right? My love for art in generally and the NFT space. And we're fortunate to have like some amazing platforms out there, right? On the NFT space already. And there's a lot of space for a lot of them, right? I just felt like I wanted to get in there because I felt like there was a space for a different type platform, right? So where I'm going to is like, we have, again, amazing platforms, like all the way from like, OpenSea, that's kind of like the self-service, almost the decentralized paradigm where everyone, any collector can come in and mint their own thing pretty much, right? And it's great and we need it, but it's also kind of a little bit of the Wild West, right? You have other platforms like, super rare, are super high quality, more curated, right? We also need those. You have the Artblocks, that platform, which I also did a project. Like, I love the platform. I love the art there, which is amazing as well, specifically for Gen Art and so on, so on, right? Like there's a bunch of them. But there's a lot of different takes on how you can kind of fragment, the space and the value prop to creators, to collectors, and to different parties. You can solve different problems essentially, right? So what I saw with like chatting with other artists and kind of like seeing like how the different platforms work, because I also publish on others. I've used OpenSea, I've used Writable, I've done work on Artblocks as well. I've done Foundation and Hake and Nook on Tesos. So like I explored the space and I figured out that I wanted to build something that's a little bit different, where we could solve different problems. One of them is, most of the artists, not all, but most of the artists on the space don't necessarily know the tech side that well, right? And vice versa. A lot of the developers are not interested or don't have or don't want to work on art, right? And so what you can see on a lot of the platforms is that the tech itself is not pushed from an artistic conceptual kind of angle, right? Meaning like, they're great platforms again, but each project on them tends to be the same, and there's a reason for that. The platforms become more scalable that way, right? So if you're looking at unit economics and you're doing a business model, it makes a lot more sense, right, to create a platform where you kind of create a little bit of universal infrastructure or smart contract and APIs and backend and UX, and then most of the projects will operate on top of that common infrastructure. And it also gives cohesiveness across projects. And there's tons of reasons why doing it like that. I wanted to explore something different, right? I wanted to explore building a platform where some of the projects might be like that, so we do have the ability of having that scale, but most of the projects wouldn't be like that. So we have the ability to explore the artistic concept together with artists, where we're mixing technologists and artists on the same team to create those unique experiences for the artist, for the collector, and for users in general, right? And that's kind of what you've seen on that first project that I did. It's called Norte on Studio Uno, as that a very unique, different experience where different collectors have access to different styles, and where you're creating your own Web3 identity, so the artist mapping your own address, and where you get a lot of artistic freedom to play with the artwork that you're minting, right? Yet that mint is still unique to you, and it's still unique. And as all of the collectors, they're building the whole collection and the rarity by creating their work as well, right? So the collectors are collectively creating the collection and the rarity behind it, and the visuals behind it. As an artist, I'm a little bit more removed by building a lot of more of the tooling, but also as a developer, I had to build a lot more custom, code and to empower all these experiences, right? For instance, you can also update tokens, and certain styles will mutate as you update them on the iterations. So for instance, we have a style that's called Mariposa, and it follows a mathematical equation to build the wings. Every time you update it, if you're an owner of that token, regardless of whether you originally minted or purchased on secondary, you can update it. And when you update it, you can change the visual style, but the script will also remove one of the wings, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's a lot built into that Norte project in Studio, and it's still available to mint, by the way.
It's a really, again, to your point, not just for you as an artist, but also as a collector, it's a completely different experience because it allows you to, and again, like you said, the genesis, like the seed value is your address, but allows you to actually tweak and like modify the parameters in terms of how you actually want it to look. And when you mint, it's really, again, I haven't seen anything like that. It's really in the generative space. That's really rad. So I think it's a fun project.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, it's still there. Over time, folks have been minting and doing amazing creations. And I love it because one of the things there is, there's always a purpose, right? Like if CryptoArte purpose was to like foster awareness of tech, right, and blockchain. With Norte, I wanted to foster creativity, right? I believe that everyone is an artist, right? Whether or not that creativity has been really be externalized or not, that's kind of like the degree of different people, how we're comfortable or not, right? But pretty much every kid that you've seen, they scribble on things and they drawn, and like I think it's, as humans, we are like naturally driven to be creative, right, and have fun. I think it's adults, kind of society and culture kind of led us to believe that no, only this selective group can be artists, but that's kind of, I just don't subscribe to that, right? I think everybody can be an artist, right? And so that's why I wanted to explore something that can put that collector more into the driver's seat, so to speak, right? It's a shared co-creation concept. And that was just the first project. That was Norte. And it was also a way to bring in the community from CryptoArte. We get rewards to, the different type of holders. So different type of tiers and a very different reward mechanism that you've probably seen on other projects, different minting experiences. And that was just the first one. We're now working on 2 more projects that are interrelated. They're kind of part of the same project, where there's some of my art and art by other artists as well. So we're starting to invite other artists into the platform. We've been kind of quietly building the platform and the infrastructure to make it more generally available to build other projects on top, right? Yeah, I'm really excited. We should be seeing something else coming up to the studio soon, and we'll make it so that holders of CryptoArte and Norte will get perks as well as as well as holders of other collections as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think you succeeded for making it, you said, more accessible for maybe people don't think of themselves as artists to kind of tinker, just like reducing that to like a really simple interface. I mean, it makes it doesn't make it intimidating to play around and just see what looks cool, right? So
yeah, there's a balance there in between creativity control versus that intimidation or like too complex, right? It has to be somewhere well balanced, and yeah, I strive to strike that. And yeah, I've been amazed by folks' creations. They're amazing. And
I was astounded too, like because I was minting early on, and and just to watch as the first 1 or 200 came through. I mean, like you said, the creativity and like what different people are able to do with it is really cool.
Yeah, thank you, and yeah, and we may, put some surprises there later on as well. Like, I typically don't chat too much about what's coming, and like, but yeah, we're definitely working on a couple other projects. There will be coming soon, and Norte is still open for folks to mint as well, and we'll keep it there as well. And we might throw additional things at it as well. The other big part of the other big problem that I wanted to solve with the Studio Uno is to make the platform a little bit more inclusive, right? So one of the problems I've seen by chatting with other artists, right? Because I'm also a collector, right? So I love chatting to fellow artists and learn about their processes and like look at their work and see, how can I help them? And there's groups that I'm, which the whole purpose is to do that are started by other folks that I've been invited. And like, I'm always happy to help fellow artists, right? And so, and one of the things I realized is that, obviously talent is everywhere, right? Some of the talent has been discovered more than others, right? But like in art in general, where like only very few, you have the power law type equation where very few are very well known and very highly valued. But you have this huge long tail of like talent, right, that no one knows about, right? So it's hard to solve because it's inherent to things that have nothing to do with the platform, right? Like more of like how humans, as we've been kind of curating art in general, right? But one of the things I wanted to solve is this problem of like, as an up and coming artist, and especially if you're coming from, unprivileged situation or like a third world country, where, $100 may be all you need to eat for a week, or who knows, maybe more, right? Then if you're going to go say like, I want to publish something on Foundation, right? You may have to, okay, you're going to have to get ETH. And to get ETH, you're going to have to go through an exchange and then, understand onboarding and creating your wallet and then mint, pay minting fees, and then maybe even listing fees, and then fees to accept your, and all of this while you had to also do the work, right? And you have this huge uncertainty, is it going to sell or not, right? So we're talking about up and coming artists, and they may not have a lot of other sources of income, right? Or if they do, those sources of income are typically taking them away from focusing on their art, right? Maybe teaching or bartending or whatever else they're doing, right? So wanted to see if I could help with that. And this project that we have coming in, that's the first dent at that, making it a lot easier for up and coming artists to participate, right? So right now it's invitation only, but we're inviting some artists that we really like their work. And we're just like paying them upfront, like, hey, help us get your work on the platform. We'll get you on the platform. We'll help you get noticed. We want to help you elevate your brand and your work. Let us acquire some of your work and put it up there for folks. And you have nothing to worry about it. You don't have to mint anything. You don't have to pay any fees. And it's not like a commission work where it's like, hey, I want an airplane that is red and is flying over an island. It's like, hey, you want to build something, go for it, right?
It's more like a book advance, really, where you're like, you allow them to create it, and publish it, but you're get bootstrapping them to even giving them the time and resources to do that, which is really cool.
Right. So that's the different, and that's why I was saying like, there's the space is huge, and the different problems that you can solve for collectors, creators, communities, also varied, right? So having lots of fun building these projects, but yeah, hopefully we'll see something pretty soon. We're getting pretty close.
Well, that's a great need or niche to tackle. I've talked to other people that are trying to approach that in different ways, but there's a lot of different approaches. But to your point, for a lot of people, $100, I mean, who knows like now what it would cost to mint one of these big pieces, but even if it's like $300 or $200, that can put it out of reach for a lot of people. And, you know, to find other alternate routes for them to still be able to, again, get their first sale, get their first couple sales, and you know, because like you said, a lot of it is establishing that reputation, that identity to just get started.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of artists are really, you know, not necessarily interested in doing all the, or don't not necessarily know or have the tools to do it properly. You know, like how do you market your work, and how do you approach collectors, and how do you talk about your work? And like, you know, a lot of them, they just want to create, they want to do the art. They don't necessarily want to run the business, right? Which is kind of how you end up having to do it unless you're already a
Yeah,
well-established and highly regarded artist, where like you already built that network effect, you already built your collector base, your community, and your brand, right? Which is amazing as well. We also want to work with those type artists as well, right? But then the proposition changes, right? For certain artists, we might, for instance, build a completely custom project with them, right? And that's also really interesting. Another thing that we want to explore is, you know, generative art typically goes very well with this kind of long format projects, right? Where you can have a lot of variety if you think through the traits and you know, rarity really well. It's harder to do that with Trada, right? So part of what we want to explore is kind of those projects are, again, that kind of like push the boundaries of the technology and the art, but also maybe, you know, are more cross-discipline, right? So it may be not pure generative art, it may be not pure trad art, right? Or it may have like a music component to it, right? Like, so kind of make it more multidisciplinary and make it more where we might have some really large projects where like more custom, and the equivalent that I typically would think, you know, kind of talk about, because I was first, you know, this may feel a little abstract, but the kind of metaphor is, if I gave you like a huge warehouse, right? And I told you, hey, Sergey, you have all the materials you want, all the textures you want, the lighting you want, the sound you want, like anything you want, right? And then you're the creator. Well, the possibilities are endless, right? You can do like a huge art installation in there that's amazing, right? And it doesn't need to be like a huge space, but the freedom of playing with all the variables is what's interesting, right? Versus like if I told you like, hey, I want 5 you know, pieces of your artwork on this canvas, on this size, and this is materials that you can paint with, then your choices are greatly diminished, right? All of a sudden, you don't have control of all these other things, whereas like in the empty warehouse, you had control of so many other things, right? When you think about, you know, art and NFTs, it's the same thing, right? If you can also play with the concept of, you know, how the smart contract works, how do the token works, what are the different ways they can interoperate or not, right? Or what are other features or functionalities that you can build on top, then you all of a sudden you have a lot more freedom and like a lot more creative choices to go together with the art, instead of just thinking of like, hey, this is a contract, you can't do anything with it, you got to submit the art, here's the canvas, right?
yeah, very cool. Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. You know, the limitation, you know, the tools that you're given or the constrained by are definitely are going to have an effect on what you're able to create.
Of course. And then, you know, of course, that comes with other, you know, compromises, right? Like we're obviously not able to do, you know, 200 of those projects in a year, right? Because the amount of effort and, you know, time, just sheer time, right, of iterating through the process to create that type project is a lot larger, right?
Sure.
So we're looking at, you know, what is the correct balance of having some projects that can, you know, produce more, versus also having that kind of really interesting kind of larger projects that are more unique, right?
With the artists, are you also having to like handhold them through the process of even minting slash using the you know the crypto aspect? Because I know for I remember talking and following some like the photography Twitter, you know, a lot of these artists, they didn't have the desire to learn about crypto and NFTs. It was kind of like a begrudging thing. So have you found that as something that you're kind of like an aspect that you're helping with the artists at the same time with this project too?
Right. Yeah. Not right now. And this project, we're talking to folks that are already on the Web3 space. So they all already minted some work. But it may be something that we help in the future for those that are interested, right? If they have an interest in learning and in the space, it might be something that we do. And, I've seen other artists already kind of doing that as well, right? Even like just as like a way to help others, right? So there's help out there. There's a bunch of different groups and folks that can help get set up if they, for folks that actually have the willingness to do so. I remember even like in Tesos, there's like groups that will give you a little bit of like free test to like kind of mint your first work, because it's like very inexpensive, right? And then those same folks will have like guides that help you like, hey, go through the platforms and here's how it works. Either way, it always takes effort, right? Like there's a lot of different tooling that they have to work through, right, to get it going. But yeah, who knows? That may be that's another example of something that we can help with, right?
Yeah, I know. I heard of another organization that's doing something similar, not in the Tezos space, in the S space, is the Weeb3 DAO, which Robeck is involved with, where they they will do sponsorships for people to do their first mint, right? Which I think is a really beautiful concept. Again, like you said, for people that, it's a huge barrier to entry, allow them to get their foot in the door and have their first one of one published. So really cool.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not familiar with that one, but I'll check it out. But yeah, for sure. It's a great way. I mean, I think the right approach to, in general, Web3 NFT space is that, the tide lifts all boats, so to speak, right? It's the teams that are doing it right, they're not competitive, they're collaborative, right? And the more folks that we can help get into the space, collectors, artists, creators, community folks, everyone, the better it is for everyone, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my experience at least in the vintage space is this is one of the most inclusive areas in Web3 you can be involved in. No one cares about race or religion or ethnicity or anything like that. I mean, there's a ton of people that I've chatted with for, over a year, and I don't know any of that, and I don't really necessarily care to. So it's definitely it's a refreshing space to be in, and from that perspective too.
Yeah, for sure. I'm big into diversity, inclusion, and equality. The sad part is that even if we don't, the equality is still not there, right? But the reason it's not there is not so much because of the space, but because of the traditional barriers that folks already have to start with, right?
Yeah, sure.
So they may have lacked access to education or to funds or like to equal pay but I think, as the space matures, they can, hopefully help with that a little bit, like, but definitely share your point there. And like, except for everything that was inherited, right? Everything else is like, hey, it's equal and open for everyone, because anyone can write that smart contract and deploy it, right?
Yeah, I mean, these platforms they're open for everyone. So if you can make it to getting a computer and having access,
right, that's the trick. It's having the education, having access, having the time, having the resources. That's the part that hasn't been solved yet, right? Like that part is still very unequal, unfortunately. But the other part is great. Yeah.
Well, which is interesting because that's one of the areas that I'm excited for crypto helping to push humanity in a different direction too, is moving us away from this central banking model of money and really how that's ravaged, a lot of societies. So
so there's
hope. So there's hope on that front.
Yeah, it's a great vehicle and very promising. I think there's lots of incentives that can be switched, right? Like where traditional, most of our intermediaries in this society tend to keep more of the profits, right? And that gives control to the few, right?
The basis of our money being debt is when you really grasp it, is really horrendous, and it's, we've led to, it's led to the, really disastrous consequences for a lot of countries, without really the citizenry knowing what's going on too. Anyway, it's a fascinating subject there too. I mean, a little bit off topic there, but
All right.
yeah, that's okay. But so great. Let's move on and talk about your Artblocks project, which, by the way, congratulations. That's a really huge deal to have your own Artblocks project. That is probably the most competitive, or one of the most competitive projects in the world, specifically in the generative space. So you want to talk about Rotor a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was really excited to hear. So I had early on, some of my collectors were like, "Hey, have you seen Artblocks?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." They're like, "You should apply. You should try and be in the platform." And at the beginning, my ambition wasn't like that much of like, "Hey, I want to solidify and like build out my artistic career." But then the more and more I got into the space, that was clearly what I wanted to do, and I wanted to continue to do more art and continue to build projects that that help drive different purposes or convey just artistic concepts, right, and feelings and passion. And yeah, Artblocks was amazing. I applied, and then I was very patient. It takes a while, and you go through a lot of steps. It's very rigorous for sure, and that's how they build a lot of their value. And one of their unique value props of having an amazing creation board, and so many folks that know so much about not just Web3 and NFT space, but also traditional art and their connections with the traditional world that continue to make, and actually a lot more now recently. So yeah, it's a fabulous platform, of course, being able to be there together with, so many amazing, generative artists, like Dimitri or Taylor Hobbs, and like so many, right? Yeah, it's amazing. I had a lot of fun working on it. It took us a lot of time. Rotor was a project that I had initially started with a very different with a different concept in mind to start with. And then when I started chatting with the folks at Artblocks and team, they had a great team. They get you through onboarding and then through the whole process, right? We started looking at like, hey, what are some of my work, so that he kind of got a better idea. So like I showed him like, here's all my different work that I had done. And then a couple of the unfinished ones. I have a couple of the work in progress ones. And then when I showed them this one, they were like, "Oh, this one is really interesting. What about exploring that?" And so that's what we did. That's how I started. So kind of repurpose a project that was in the works, but with a slightly different concept, and kind of turn it around a little bit. And I'm really pleased with the outcome and how everything turned out. So yeah, I was actually really excited and like surprised that it minted out as fast as it did. Especially in kind of the current market conditions, right? So we launched it, I think, about a month ago now, give or take, and I think it minted out in 2 or 3 days. So that was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, again, like you said, the you're in the company of some amazing artists and projects. One of my favorite is Singularity. That's to take such a I don't know, it's so simple and elegant, but I don't know, it's just such a striking project. There's so many amazing projects there. So I'm hoping that do you have any ability to submit after you've done one of these projects, to submit for the curated collection? How does that work for Artblocks?
Yeah. So I actually submitted this one to the curation board. So once you're in the platform, you can submit projects for curation opportunity to the curation board. Rotor didn't make it, which is totally fine. But yeah, I can, for different reasons. One of them, the main one being that it wasn't as innovative in terms of uniqueness when compared to other previous curated projects, right? Like that's one of the main things they're looking for curated projects. Obviously they look at a lot of different things, and that's what the curation board is there for, right? But one of them is looking for projects that are not that much similar to the previous curated projects, right? And I had started this project even before, purposing it for Artblocks, right? So it just happened, and then that's totally fine, But I learned a lot. The team is amazing, and they helped me grow, I think, as an artist quite a bit. So I really appreciate it for the help, and also kind of the guidance, and the platform itself is great, of course. So yeah, really excited for them, and yeah, to kind of digress a little bit, but to focus back on your question, yes, you can submit projects again. There's a little bit of a cool off period. So I think it's a couple months for a factory project after it has been minted out, right? And then you can submit again, right? And I think the reason they do that is so that there's no, 2 or 3 artists that, produce a lot of work and monopolize the whole thing. Really, you want to make sure that there's enough variety and space for different artists, to come on board and publish their projects and their work, right? So, and then you have to work with a schedule and all that. So it can be a few months, but yeah, I'd love to. I haven't started one, but it's been on my mind to kind of go for it again, because it was a very rewarding experience. And I also really love my lecture base that, keeps, inspiring me all the time. And like, they reach out and it's like, hey, I love Rotor, or like, hey, look at my man, what do you think? Or, that's really amazing. That drives a lot of, a lot of passion and creativity.
I just wanted to shout out you're talking about the rigor and the quality of art blocks in terms of really maintaining high standards. I mean, I have to really give them a lot of credit. They helped legitimize generative art in a much broader scene due to their rigor and their quality control. It would have been really easy for them to, get sloppy or really lose that focus, but they've done a great job. And I just wanted to they've really been instrumental in popularizing this art form.
Yeah, for sure. For Gen Art and for the Web3 and NFT space as well. And they continue to develop bridges with the TriData space, which is also great. This is badly needed. So yeah, for sure. They've done a great contribution to all of us.
Yeah. So it's nice to see a company still be successful and not, turn into the evil empire of the, of the NFT space.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'll be looking forward to seeing your future projects as well. So, well, I know that, as we discussed previously, you have, a long background as being a developer and having your own development company. You want to talk about Chimichurri and some of the projects and some of the work that you're looking at right there?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So yeah, it's really exciting times for the company as well. So I founded Chimichurri thinking about, was around 2015. The company started as a product company. We were building a platform to build SaaS products, right? So if you wanted to build like a software as a service, their product with subscriptions and users and memberships, and then other custom functionality. That's how we started. We had the product platform offering there, and we do some custom development around it. And then it worked okay, but the business model didn't work so well, right? So we pivoted to more services, and it's been going really, really well. Like we're up to about 15 developers, give or take, and have a hybrid model. We work with have lots of developers across Latin America, like exceptional talent that I'm myself from Argentina, so that helps. Over the years, I can build a network of different folks I trust, right, and help us find the right talent. So yeah, the premise is very simple. We are connecting, that talent with opportunity here, and my CTO, it's a great friend of mine, Nathan, and I, we're in Texas, and we have this hybrid approach. And yeah, over the years, we've been doing well and kind of growing slowly the team. And then recently, given the success with CryptoArte, right, and the visibility in the space, we started to get a lot more work on the Web3 and NFT space. So really excited for that. But we love the space. We have a lot of folks, a lot of devs, and the whole team knows it really well. So we've done work for the Degen Trilogy. That was for the partnership between Coinbase and Bored Ape Yacht Club. We've done work for the Love Death Art project, the Netflix series Love Death and Robots. So yeah, some really high profile projects that we've had the chance to work through together with our clients, right? Licensing product for feature. We're working for other on other products for feature as well. Jimmy also develops Studio Uno as well. So I'm my own. The Studio Uno company is also our client.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
we're building a lot of different projects on Web3 and NFT space. We're also building decentralized review system on Arbitrum. Yeah, so not just NFTs, but lots of different projects. We're also building, a project for Huxley Saga. We're adapting behind them as well. This huge, IP franchise, comic series project. So yeah, we've had the chance to work on a lot of projects, and yeah, love to connect with other founders and folks that are looking to build.
Well, that's exciting. I know as someone in the space, it would be much less intimidating and be a lot more real to be able to talk to someone who's also a creator, not just a suit, right? Who doesn't really know, like, but who can see the vision, right? So I definitely see the value there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. We kind of handpick who we work with, the projects we work with. And it's kind of, I think it's mutual in general. And, we're not just building the tech, we're actually, advising the teams. In some cases, I'm a formal advisor to the startups and the companies behind them. In other cases, just through our services, right? But we advise the teams in a variety of topics, right? Like not just the tech, but a little bit from creator angle. Sometimes, so for instance, with Huxley Saga, Ben Maurer is an amazing creator and illustrator, and I chatted with him many times, like I love doing that because like it's such an enriching experience where like, it doesn't feel like we're working, right? Which it's what you want, right? Like I think that's that magic spot where we're doing work, but it doesn't feel like working. So yeah, it's been very rewarding, and also we've learned a lot. Clients, come to us sometimes with ideas that are very innovative and challenging, and we've always figured out a way to get them done, right? So it's been really rewarding, both as a creator, as an entrepreneur, and from the technology side. I'm really enjoying the experience of working with a variety of teams, right, on different products, different offerings, different platforms.
Yeah, that's quite a lot of variety to be working across all those different types of projects. It's going to be interesting to see. We're in this, we're now in kind of like this bear market for the last couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
But I have personally, I believe that I have the vision where NFTs are going to be integral in a lot of people's lives. I'm not worried at all about the future, but I know it's shaking some people out, and I think this is a good washout for some of the people. There were so many pump and dump and scam projects in the last year with the hype, so I think this will, like you said, you'll be able to be choosy and select the people that are, like I said, stuff that's fun to work on and interesting, instead of the like latest 10K PFP animal drop, right?
Yeah. It's they're typically easy to spot just because we've been on the space for a while, right? But yeah, I mean, it's the bear market unfortunately did push away a few of legitimate teams as well, right?
Oh, okay.
My instinct is that they will come back, like just like rough times for some, and yeah, definitely will come back. But yeah, I agree. It's also cleaning up. So
Yeah. I mean, like, if you've been around crypto long enough, you're accustomed to these, bull and bear cycles. And, if you have the vision and you understand, where things are going, then it doesn't necessarily bother you, but if you're, and nothing against people that have shorter time horizons or whatever, if that doesn't work for you, then yeah, it makes sense for them to duck out. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's yeah, it's that, and it's also the not everybody managed their leverage positions as well, right? Like, so that's unfortunate part where, like, obviously you had some legit teams that didn't necessarily manage the risk properly, right? So
yeah,
it's just learning. I'm like, I don't do that perfectly either. I don't think anyone can, right? Like, it's impossible to time the market and doing that consistently well. But I think on the bear, when the bear comes, that's where you see the true builders. That's where you see the true creators, the true entrepreneurs with vision and passion. They're the ones that are staying, right? With a few other, unfortunate cases where, like, hey, I'm sorry, I was too leveraged or something, and it's fine. They will come back, right? And some lessons are harder to learn than others, right? As a founder myself, I built many companies that didn't make it, but I don't see them as failures, right? Like, they're just all contributing to the success that I had with the ones that work, right? Like, we all learn by those mistakes and failures, probably a lot more than from that what we learn from the successes, right? So yeah,
a common theme I've seen with innovators and creators is that they're always looking to the future and not really dwelling on what other people would consider a mistake or the past, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think the future is very bright. There's a lot of work to do. No questions, right? We gotta make crypto onboarding easier. We're gonna improve UX. We're gonna improve speed, scalability, gas cost. Like, so many things that as we improve those over time and the tech continues to improve, I think adoption will increase, and I think NFTs will continue to become a larger market. In which order, I mean, like, nobody knows, right? Or at least I don't know, but, like, my guess is that probably continue the art industry, of course, a huge one, but also continue into software product and more utility, and we'll see what happens with DeFi as well, but I'm sure I'll bounce back, and there's just so many applications and so much out there that's still left to build out, right? So many problems to solve, and as I think the layers 1, layer 2 continue to evolve, wallets continue to become more ubiquitous, and we'll start having you'll start seeing, like, more of, like, deeper mobile integration type things probably, and then that's where, like, mainstream will probably start adopting more and more, and the lower value items or tickets, those are the hardest to tackle, right? Because if you're going to buy something for $1, right, that transaction needs to be, like, super efficient, right? But the highest, more scarce, and you can have higher value tickets where provenance matters, authenticity matters, and where, like, a 30 or 40 $50 transaction fee is nothing compared, right, in terms of percent. Those are where I think it's more of kind of the low hanging fruit, right? Like, those luxury items. And I think it's naturally we're gonna see that natural progression, right, of different industries and brands adopting more and building more community and building more interoperability, more utility, more products, more software. That's what I think about it. But
Yeah, like you said, it feels like we're really just on the cusp of having the tools and the technology to actually start doing stuff on scale. At least that's how I'm kind of seeing and feeling it. With, like you said, we're really finally close to the merge for ETH, and these L2 scaling solutions are actually looking really good now. Like, Optimism is one I've played with. That's really rad. I mean, I don't know, that the technology is finally getting there. And like you said, there's like none of these technologies are a perfect fit for everything. For your most valuable items, you're going to keep those on L1. Like no,
Right.
like no one's gonna be moving their their CryptoPunk or their Bored Ape to a L2, right? For just for the security reasons, right?
Yeah, yeah, but also think about, luxury items as, like an exotic car, or like, high value purse, or all of this. It makes perfect sense, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a perfect fit, right? For many reasons, right? Watches, like all of this, luxury items are a perfect fit for NFTs. The rest is going to take a little more time. For the rest, we need more kind of ubiquitous integrations of wallets into like mobile and desktop, and that may take a little bit longer. But yeah, I agree with you. We're starting to see some really great scalability solutions out there.
Yeah, I'd love to see, to your point too, even on the wallet side and UX side, we still need a ton of work. One of the complaints I have is, when you have to sign things with, even with you have a hardware wallet,
Yeah.
some things that you have to sign, it's almost impossible to tell if, unless you're super sophisticated, whether or not you should be signing it or not. I mean, simple things like that.
Yeah.
I'd hope we'd see some improvement on that end too, because there's so many ways to get rooked out in the crypto space that I'd like to see
Yep.
it. I don't know whether it's standards for how that's done, or how that'll evolve, but I'd like to see things improve on that front too.
Yeah, yeah. I think the solution will come from multiple angles, right? The wallet getting better, um, the some of the protocols also probably getting better, and it'll be a multiple prong type solution to that. But, I don't have like an idea of like all the solutions, but I have some of them. We've talked with the team at Timmy about a few of them. Like for instance, there's a product that we have in mind for the to solve some of the problems around stolen NFTs, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of different solutions, so yeah, that's just one of them, but it creates a lot of opportunity. That's the bright side, right? Like solving those problems with the right type solutions can be very valuable, right? So that's where I think you see the true kind of visionary entrepreneurs, like tackling those hard to tackle problems that are not just hard to tackle, but are also very valuable, right? And that's kind of what pushes the space forward, right? When you see that type of innovation, right? So yeah, I'm excited for everything that's going on, and what is to come for sure.
Me too. I'm really excited about the future. Again, I'm not bothered at all by the price being down. I'm really psyched about, like you said, we've got so much stuff like right in the pipeline. So it's going to be fun to see what people create.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Prices will continue to fluctuate. It's just part of the market, and yeah, um, yeah, I'm not worried about it either.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on? I know we've kind of gone the spectrum here from your background in crypto and art and generative art and some of your projects. Is there anything else you wanted to mention?
No, I think that this has been like a great pleasure. Thank you so much. I mean, if anyone wants to reach out, and CryptoArte on Twitter, that's the only thing I would. And from there, you can find all of our Discord and info. So yeah, that's the only thing I can think about.
Great. Well, I certainly appreciate you joining me today. It's been fun.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sergi, and then thank you for everything you've done for the space and for historical NFTs as well. I know you've been a great leader in the space and niche as well. So thank you for that as well.
Great. Thank you.